Good day, ma'am, and hello, future educators. My name is Stella Marie B. Halipa, currently taking up Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Filipino at University of Antique. So for today's video, we are going to talk about globalization, the definition, importance, natures, metaphors, and aspects of globalization. So perhaps you have already heard about globalization before. But what exactly is globalization? What comes to your mind when you hear the word globalization? Globalization is the process by which people and goods move easily across the borders. In other words, through globalization, we are able to move and communicate with others, not only locally but all over the world, especially in conducting business internationally. Globalization is not a new process or phenomenon. Years before the advent of technology, people are purchasing and selling each other's property, goods, and other objects with certain values. The Silk Road is one example of the globalization around century, wherein it is a old trade route developed between China and Europe that allowed the exchange of not only goods but also of concepts, ideas, and of cultures. The only new about globalization is the range, the scale, and the speed at which these movements are happening. One example of the wide-ranging effects of globalization is the internet and the smartphones, wherein we can connect and communicate with other people through the use of it faster and easier. So the term globalization gained popularity after the Cold War in the early 1990s to describe the movements of people, goods, cultures, and money across national borders that has led to the increase of interconnectedness among the world's population economically, politically, socially, and culturally. So many have attempted to define the word globalization, and these are the several definitions of globalization. For Anthony Giddens, he defined globalization as a concept refers both to the compression of the world and the intensification of the consciousness of the world as a whole. For Roland Robertson, he defined globalization as a concept refers to both the compression of the world and the intensification of consciousness of the world as a whole, like Anthony Giddens. But the key dynamics at play here are global interconnectedness and global consciousness. For David Helb, he defined globalization as a process which embodies a transformation in the spatial organization of social relations and transactions, generating transcontinental or interregional flows and networks of activity, interaction, and the exercise of power. Another one is Manfred Stiger. He defined globalization as the expansion and the intensification of social relations and consciousness across world time and across world space. So by expansion, refers to both the creation of new social networks and the multiplication of existing connections that cut across traditional political, economic, cultural, and geographical boundaries. By intensification, it refers to the expansion, stretching, and acceleration of these networks. Not only are global connections multiply, but they are also becoming more closely knit and expanding their reach. Another one is Robert Cox. According to him, the characteristics of globalization trend include the internationalizing of production, the new international division of labor, new migratory movements from north to south, the new competitive environment that accelerate these processes, and the internationalizing of the state, making states into the agencies of the globalizing world. It was cited in Rahu, Netherlands Development Assistance Council in 2000. The last who attempted to define the word globalization is George Ritzer. According to him, he defined globalization as an increasing liquidity and the growing multi-directional flows of people, objects, places, and information, as well as the structures they encounter and create that are barriers to or expedite to those flows. Let us move on to Arjun Appadurai, who is an Indian-American anthropologist that believes that there are different kinds of globalization occur on multiple and intersecting dimensions of integration that he calls scapes. Appadurai's argument are simple that there are multiple globalization that it is divided into 5 scapes. These scapes are: first, the ethnoscapes, which is refers to the global movement of people. Second is the megascape, which is about the flow of culture. Third is the technoscape, which is refers to the circulation of mechanical goods and software. Fourth is the financescape, which is denotes the global circulation of money. And the 5 is edgescape, which is the realm where political ideas move around. Basically, when we talk about globalization, think about interconnectedness or growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and populations brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services, technology and flows of investment, people and information, making the world borderless and creating a global village wherein, through globalization, people are being brought together by the internet and other electronic communication interconnections. So after those several definitions, let us now talk about the importance of globalization, its advantages and disadvantages. So we all know that globalization is all about the interconnectedness of people and businesses across the world that eventually leads to global cultural, political, and economic integration. Due to the increased demand in high-tech industry around the world, business and industry have potential for huge profits working globally. So here are the advantages of globalization. So the first advantage of globalization is the peaceful relations, wherein most of the countries has resorted to trade relations with each other in order to boost their economy, leaving behind any bitter past experiences, if any. Then it was followed by the employment, wherein it is considered as the most crucial advantage. Globalization has led to the generation of numerous employment opportunities. Companies are moving toward the developing countries to acquire labor force. One example of the employment are the OFWs working abroad or working in some developing countries such as in the Middle East, in US, in Canada, or in Australia. The third one is education. A very critical advantage that aided the population is the spread of education. With numerous educational institutions around the globe, one can move out from home country for better opportunities elsewhere. Globalization has contributed to the education of the students because now there are scholarships being run to study abroad or becoming an exchange students. Next is the product quality. The product quality has been enhanced so as to retain the customers. Today, the customers may compromise with the price range but not in the quality of the product. Poor or low quality can adversely affect consumers' satisfaction. The fifth advantage of globalization is the cheaper prices. Globalization has brought in fierce competition in the market. So some companies lowered the prices of their products to be affordable for the people. Next is communication. Every single information is accessible from almost all corners of the world. Circulation of information is already a tedious task and can happen in seconds. The internet has significantly affected the global economy, thereby providing direct access on the information of the product. So, because of globalization, we can now be able to communicate with people not only locally but all over the world. We can now conduct our business through onlines with the use of smartphones and any social media platforms such as Skypes or through video calling, and also getting direct feedback from our suppliers or from our customers. Next is transportation. It is considered as the wheel of any business organization. Connectivity to the various parts of the world is no more a serious problem. Today, with various modes of transportation available, one can conveniently deliver the products to a customer located at any part of the world. So, for example, delivering or transporting vegetables from rural to cities through jeepneys, motorcycle, or trucks. One example also is the airlines, wherein we can now go and travel abroad, going back to our country in just few hours or in just a day. GDP increase or gross domestic product. It is the money value of the final goods and services produced within the domestic territory of the country on an accounting year. So followed by the free trade, wherein free trade is the policy in which a country does not levy taxes, duties, subsidies, or quota on the export-import of goods or services from other countries. There are countries which have resolved the free trade in specific regions. These allow consumers to buy goods and services comparatively at a lower prices. Then, travel and tourism. Globalization has promoted tourism to great heights. International trade among countries also helped in the increase in the number of tourists that visit different places of the world. Because of the advancement of technology brought about by the globalization, we can now post online and have our travel vlogs to encourage more travelers and wanderers to visit our place and to see the beauty of our country. The last advantage of globalization is the external borrowing. With the help of globalization, there is opportunity for the corporation, national and subnational borrowers to have better access to external finance with facilities such as external commercial borrowing and syndicated loans. After talking about the advantages of globalization, let us now move on to the disadvantages of globalization. So, do you have any idea about the disadvantages of globalization? So, to fully understand and identify the negative impacts of globalization, let us now talk about the disadvantages brought by the globalization. The first disadvantage of globalization is the health issues. Globalization has given rise to more health risks and present new threats and challenges for epidemics. The dawn of HIV/AIDS, having its origin in the wilderness of Africa, the virus spread like wildfire throughout the globe in no time. Just like with the COVID-19 pandemic, wherein this virus was originated in a small town in Wuhan, China, and now spreading all over the world. Another one are the food items, which are transported to various countries, and this is a matter of concern, especially for the perishable items. Next is the loss of culture. With large number of people moving in and out of the country, the culture takes a backseat. People may adapt to the culture of the foreign country. They tend to follow the foreign culture more and forgetting their own roots. This can give rise to the cultural conflict. Then, it was followed by uneven wealth distribution. It is said that rich are getting richer while poor are getting poorer. In the real sense, globalization has not been able to reduce poverty. So the fourth one is the environmental degradation. The Industrial Revolution has changed the outlook of the economy. Industries are using natural resources by means of mining, drilling, etc., which puts a burden on environment. Forests are also turned into buildings and establishments, which resulted to climate change and global warming. Because of man-made activity and their goal to have an economic progress, environmental degradation is now evident. The next one is disparity. Though globalization has opened new avenues like wider markets and employment, there is still disparity that exists in the development of economies. Structural unemployment owes to the disparity created. Developed countries are moving their factories to foreign countries where labor is cheaply available. Then it was followed by conflicts. Globalization has given rise to terrorism and other forms of violence. Such acts did not only cause the loss of human life, but also huge economic losses. One example of these conflicts are the terrorism that happens in Marawi City, and also such forms of violence that happening on our overseas Filipino workers abroad. The last disadvantage of globalization is the cutthroat competition. Opening the doors of international trade has given birth to intense competition. This has affected the global markets dramatically. The local players thereby suffer huge losses as they lack the potential to advertise or export their products on a large scale. Therefore, the domestic market shrinks. The cutthroat competition is, for example, a company wanted to launch a game-changing product this 30th of March 2021. However, from some leaks and sources of another competitor of this company got to know about it and poured in the resources to launch the replica of the same game-changing product 2 days before the 30th of March 2021. So this is called cutthroat competition. So those are the advantages and disadvantages brought by the globalization.
Hello there, I am Christine Maypi Magbanwa, taking up Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Filipino at University of Antiques. So for today, after the discussion about the importance, the definition, the advantages and disadvantages of globalization, let us now move to the nature and metaphor of globalization. Metaphors of globalization. Number 1. Solidity. Refers to the barriers that prevent or make difficult the movement of things. Solid can be natural or man-made. Example of the natural solids are landforms and bodies of water. In additional, Great Wall of China and the Berlin Wall is a man-made barriers. Number 2, liquidity. As a state of matter takes the shape of its container are not fixed. It refers to increasing ease of movement of people, things, information, and places in the contemporary world. Zygmunt Bauman said about liquidity of globalization that today's liquid phenomena change quickly and their aspects, spatial and temporal, are in continuous fluctuation. This means that space and time are crucial elements of globalization. In global finance, changes in the stock market are a matter of seconds. Their movement is difficult to stop. Example, videos uploaded on YouTube or Facebook are unstoppable once they are viral. They are so-called internet sensation, will be known not only in their homeland but also to the entire world. Number 3. Flows. Flows are the movement of people, things, places, and information brought by growing porosity of global limitation by Ritzer 2015. Nowadays, different foreign cuisines being patronized and consumed by Filipinos. Aside from local dishes, many of us are fond of eating sushi, hamburger, ramen, fries, and other food introduced by foreign cultures. Clearly, foods are being globalized. Now we should proceed to nature of globalization. Number 1. Liberalization. It stands for the freedom of the entrepreneurs to establish any industry or trade or business venture within their own countries, abroad. In simple words, liberalization is the process or means of the elimination of the control of the state over economic activities. Number 2. Free trade. It stands for the free flow of trade relations among nations. Each state grants a most favored nation or MFN status to other states and keeps its business away from excessive and hard regulatory and protective regimes. In short, free trade is a trade policy that does not restrict imports or exports. It can also be understood as the free market applied to international trade. Number 3. Globalization of economic activity. Economic activities are to be governed both by the domestic market and also the world market. It stands for the process of integrating the domestic economy to the world economies. Also, it refers to the increasing interdependence of world economies as a result of the growing scale of cross-border trade of commodities and services. Economic activity is the activity of producing, buying, or selling of goods and services in exchange of money or money's worth. Example, a worker working in a construction and getting wages in return. Number 4. Liberalization of import-export system stands for liberating the import-export activity and securing a free flow of goods and services across borders. It is the removal or reduction of restrictions or barriers on the free exchange of goods between nations. For example, we, the Filipino business owners, has the liberty to export our product into different countries and them importing their goods across Philippines. Number 5. Privatization. Keeping the state away from ownership of means of production and distribution, letting the free flow of industrial, trade, and economic activity across borders. Transfer of ownership, property on business from government to private sector is termed privatization. Some examples of services that have been privatized include airport operation, data processing, vehicle maintenance, and waste collection and disposal. Number 6. Increased collaboration. Encouraging the process of collaboration among the entrepreneur with a view of secure rapid modernization, development, and technological advancement. Increasing collaboration between workers and departments starts with team communication that brings people toward the same end goal. Example, in the office, 2 or more people work together using thinking and sharing ideas to achieve a common goal and better outcome. Number 7. Economic reforms. Encouraging fiscal and financial reforms with a view to give strength to free world trade, free enterprise, and market forces. Economic reform or microeconomic reform, it dominated government thinking in the 1980s and 90s. A floating dollar, lower tariffs, deregulation, tax cuts, and tax reform, corporatization and privatization, labor market reform, and the contracting out of government services by Gallup 2011. Number 8. Deregularization. This refers to the lifting over the trade and operation of public utilities or goods, as in the case of power and oil in the Philippines. It's also the reduction or elimination of government power in a particular industry, usually enacted to create more competition within the industry. Another example, aside from power and oil in the Philippines, the regularization of the airline, long-distance telecommunication, and tracking industries. That's all. Thank you.
I am Wendy B. Barilla, Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Filipino at University of Antique. And for today, we're going to tackle about the different aspect of globalization. Number 1, economic globalization may be defined as intercontinental exchange of product, services, labor. Multinational cooperation have been instrumental in globalization of both production and distribution networks. It refers to the increasing interdependence of the world economies as a result of growing scale of cross-border trade of commodities and services, flow of international capital, and wide and rapid spread of technologies. Economic globalization refers to mobility of people, capital, technology, goods, and services. It refers on how independent we have all become, especially countries, religion, and trading books. Countries today depend on each other. We depend on each other for raw materials, vehicle parts, foods, and thousands of other items. Example, when you buy a car, where was it made? It probably come from many different countries. Number 2, political globalization is the proliferation of international and regional organizations composed of state and spread of non-political actors. Through globalization, political issues such as rights of women and children are now currently discussed, in which this aspect promote globally certain values such as equality, human rights, justice, democracy, and moral values. Political globalization refers to the growth of worldwide political system. Almost of the world is organized by a single type of unit, the nation of state. Number 3, military globalization is characterized by extensive as well as intensive network of military force that operate internationally. According to David Hill, military globalization is a process which embodies the growing of intensity and extensity of military relation among the political units of the world system. It reflects both expanding network of worldwide military ties and relation, as well as the impact of the key military technological innovation from STEM ships to satellites, which over time had constituted them into a single geostrategic space. Robert Kiyosaki and Joseph Nye, military globalization entails long-distance network interdependence in which force and the threat of promise of a force are employed. Example, globalization alliances become clear during wartime. U.S. alliance with Britain in war against Afghanistan and Iraq. North Korea and its nuclear weapon. North Korea suggested on April 24, 2017 it will continue its nuclear weapon test, saying it will never bolster its nuclear force to the maximum consecutive and successive the way at any moment. In the face of what called U.S. aggression and hysteria, U.S. is the number one exporter of weapons globally and the last on the list of exporter of non-military aid to the developing world. Number 4. Cultural globalization refers to spread of one culture across national borders. It is the transmission of ideas, meaning, and values around the world in such a way to extend and intensify social relations. This process marked by the consumption of culture that has been diffused by the internet, popular culture media, and international travel. However, the downside of this is some culture that has exclusive on a certain countries are slowly vanishing. Number 5. Environmental globalization refers to the interdependence of countries to work together to solve environmental problems. The effect of globalization to the environment are still not completely identified, though some studies suggested that the process has many consequences in the environment. Number 6. Criminal globalization is the intercontinental spread of global crime and its impact on the government and individuals. Globalization has internationalized crime such as drug trafficking and the trafficking of women and children have become much more difficult to control because of their international character. Not only crimes are globalized but also diseases. Example, criminal case versus Duterte filed before International Criminal Court. Lawyer Jude Sabio shows the stamp complaint he filed before the International Criminal Court in The Hague, Netherlands on Monday, April 24, 2017.